Christiansen.
Yeah.
What's up, guys? It's Tuesday or something? I don't know.
Tuesday, I think.
I'm here with Travis Christiansen. That way. We're going to have a conversation about how he is surviving in the Utahs. Travis, I'm going to ask you to do a thing. I'm going to ask you to mute yourself right now while I go share some resources. And the reason I don't do it for you is because I told somebody I was doing that once, and it didn't actually mute them. And then we got to listen to Kim Wilson's son's heartbreak when she thought he was muted. So that went wide.
Okay.
So I'll ask you to push mute.
Right.
Guys, I'm going to share a couple of resources. We'll come back and talk to Travis about what he's doing. So I will push a button, and it will go to this screen. So, I saw a cool thing today, an interesting thing, maybe a nuanced thing, where a lawyer who has worked really hard to go through the Dave Ramsey process and save money and get out of debt, and it's all very cool, said, hey, look, we're all saving money, the highest savings rate we've ever had before. Everything's going, great. And it's sort of a disaster if you ask economists. One of the points that Dave Ramsey makes in his book is actually that you can, the complaint that it's bad if people save money, right? Because it'll ruin the economy, that you shouldn't believe that because you'll never see people do it in mass. If you decide to save, all of your neighbors are not saving, so it's fine. Well, we're in a situation where all the neighbors are saving. It's a bit of a number crunch disaster. This is an article from CNN talking about Americans saving like it's the 1980s. We are, to use Mary Jutton's phrase, hoarding cash, not toilet paper. We're paying down credit card debt. That money that was sent from the government for stimulus, a bunch of it did not go to TVs and stuff the way it did the 2008 stimulus. It went to people's savings account and paying off credit cards. So that is interesting to think about when it comes to us. George Saharis, in his session in the conference, talked about how, as they've been surveying people, and with this data Clio's putting out that I would encourage you to pay attention to, that people are saving up their money to deal with a legal issue later. And the question is, does that money, do they pay for legal? Is this preparing them to, when some kind of recovery comes back, I'm going to go hire a lawyer? Or do they continue that hoarding mentality and try to find other ways to save money, other places to put their money? So that's an interesting article to look at. And again, I would send you over to that Clio data as well. Another thing that, because we're about to talk to a Utah attorney especially, I think is sort of, I'm open to be persuaded on this, but I don't care. Trade names are apparently about, they're getting really close to being allowed in Texas. So far in Texas, it's had to be Johnson, Schenker, Schmidt, and Stevens, and whatever. And apparently that's what pros do. And now we're getting really close. And I'm sorry, this article is behind a paywall. I have feelings about that, but I'll just leave them. But now we're getting closer to that being allowed. I don't think it's been voted on just yet. But I was in a lawyer thread, and I saw somebody refer to this as an existential threat. As in, as soon as trade names are allowed, there will be no more lawyers. Excuse me. Which, of course, is hilarious because many jurisdictions allow this and no one has died. So, I don't know, maybe I'm just totally off on this, but that's something to pay attention to. There are a lot of legislative shifts going on with lawyers. The other thing I wanted to mention, I've been talking a lot about expert lawyers as consultants, thinking of themselves more as consultancies than as experts, or than as lawyers. And to do that, I wanted to share this Delta model thing with you. This is something Kat Moon and some other friends have been working on. And I apologize, I cannot breathe today. This is the value of live. So anyway, the thing that I've been talking about is that as lawyers, a lot of times when you're talking about strategy and words like that and these things that we think clients want from us, the truth is, if you look at most data about consultants giving strategy advice, most of their advice, about what's going to come in the future is not far off from just average, right? Like they're not any more correct really than throwing darts at a wall. Things tend to follow a pretty steady course over time, and you don't see a lot of big shifts. And so, consultants are rarely, really great predictors, but what they're good at is facilitating people making decisions. And so I would encourage you to think of yourself maybe as more of a change management engineer than a legal technician. I think when we're talking about our trade names and existential risk to lawyers, this is an interesting question of what we do. We really have to figure out what it is that we do. And I think this Delta model really helps broaden our concept of what it is that clients want from us. I've written about this a lot. They want more of these consultancy skills. And so I encourage you to read that and to think about that. So those were the big idea resources that I wanted to share today. And we're going to get back over to Travis. I would ask you to mute yourself. So Travis is a solo?
I'm mostly solo. I have a part-time associate, and one of my law partners is 79, looking to retire maybe.
In
he can't not come to the office.
Right.
St. George, Utah.
In southern Utah, in St. George, Utah. And you do mostly family, right?
Yeah, mostly family, kind of the old country lawyer model still. Do families, estate planning, business stuff, criminal defense. So kind of those things when a lot of lives fall apart, they call us.
And I was curious to talk to you because, I was thinking about all these regulatory things. And if you guys have not paid attention to this, I've posted articles in other meetings before about what Utah is doing. And one could say this isn't going to change that much, but B, it is the biggest bundle of changes of any of the states that we've seen. Even California backed off quite a bit. Arizona has gone sort of halfway. I think Utah might be the only one that's pushing for this sandbox model, this regulatory sandbox model where people can apply to break the rules under supervision. So really interesting stuff. And I was curious about it from your perspective as the sort of the man on the street. When you see all these changes, and obviously to you probably talking about trade names being allowed is a hilarious, like thinking of that as the threat is probably hilarious to you because you guys are talking about much more fundamental changes. How are you dealing with that as the man on the street?
Well, number one, we've embraced the trade name thing. There are a lot of attorneys that have done that. And one of the advantages of it is in my practice over the last 10 years, we've had different partners come and go and retire. And so, okay, they left the firm. Now we need to change the name. And then, this guy came in, he was a partner, he left the firm. Now we got to change the name. And so one of the strengths really of developing that trade name from a business continuity perspective is if something happens and you lose a partner or two, you keep the trade name, you keep the name and some name recognition. You look at some of the old firms, there's probably firms in Texas that are still carrying on the names of the two founders from the 1800s, right. But that's their name and they were partners so they can keep it. But even then so trade name's not a big deal. And it helps, I think, the consumer find an attorney that will meet their needs, if you will. There's a law firm up north that calls themselves the Advocates, and that's their thing. They say, we're just going to go fight, and they just go fight.
I heard them on an ad on a Utah Jazz podcast. I did.
Yeah. We named our firm, Travis Christiansen, Legal Solutions, because our focus is on helping people find solutions to their problems. And so it helps, I think, the consumer in that regard and knowing who they're going to be getting in a way of maybe your business philosophy, some of that kind of thing. There's another firm, one of the first ones to go to the trade name of One Law. One Law. And that was kind of while Yellow Pages were still there. So they were at the top of everything because they were a number and they were the number one.
Well done, Jason. Well done.
Yeah. Our friend Jason Velez, and some of those guys. So smart thinking of using those trade names, and we've tried to do it. Utah and the regulatory changes have been amazing. the one that I think is the most concerning, more than the sandbox, is the one that came out last year, which is licensed practicing paralegals, which essentially now someone with if you meet the requirements, I can't remember what they are. So you've got to have a bachelor's degree. You had to have worked for so many years at a law firm. And then you have to take some other specialized classes in areas of the law. And then you have to pass a test. But in family law, debt collection, and landlord-tenant, paralegals can pretty much do almost everything but go beyond the bar of the courtroom. And so you could have, in family law, a divorce case where you've got a paralegal who advises and helps a client draft their complaint for divorce, their motions for temporary orders, sits in and advises them and helps them at mediation.
Right.
But then if there's ever actually a court hearing, you have to have an attorney still.
Which they've done in other states. I mean, this has been done.
Yeah.
Is it Oregon?
I think Oregon or Washington. Yeah.
Aren't they the same place? I don't know.
One of those.
It's like North and South Dakota. I think there's no difference. Sorry to all you Portlanders. Portlandier? I don't know what the term is. Yeah, and this what's interesting about this is some people are like, oh, this is no big deal. You know, they're taking the work that lawyers weren't doing anyway. But I'm sorry. If you had a business model where it was you as the lawyer and you had 5 paralegals filling out immigration documents and, and they're now those people can go out and practice on their own without supervision, that is existential to your current business model. It doesn't mean that's an existential crisis in terms of your expertise or in terms of your ability to serve those exact same people, but it's a problem for your model for sure.
Yeah, and that's the other part of it is they can have their own standalone business. They do not have to work for a law firm. They can just go do their thing. We really haven't seen anybody in my area do that yet, buy into that. I think if a smart attorney is going to figure out a way to do that and employ those type of folks in his firm. And then, which brings us now, I guess, kind of to the next step, which is the regulatory sandbox. Of being able to have non-attorneys have equity ownership in a law firm and the means by which that happens. They had this huge committee, and now there is a new committee that is made up of a lot of it, some past bar presidents, I think some appellate judges. Anyway, it's an interesting committee. And so if you want to do one of these things, let's say I wanted to hire some of these licensed practicing paralegals and hire 3 or 4 of them, give them each 5% of the business, and we're going to do divorce mediation expertise or whatever it is, I have to go to this committee and basically present my business plan. Almost, the sense I get, it's almost like going and asking for an SBA loan at your local bank is, here's my business plan, here's my performance, here's how I think I can be profitable, here's how I can. There are some rules. You have to be able to maintain your professional independence as an attorney. Tell that to an investor that put millions with you, maybe. So that would be kind of that joint venture thing. And I think that may be good. There are some attorneys I know in my area, their legal assistant paralegals have been with them 25 years and they have no equity in the business. So I think this can be a way for employee incentives and some of those kind of things and actually help the law firm business model. I have talked to a couple of guys in the personal injury field. Their goal is to get their business sellable to, say, a litigation finance firm that comes and just buys their business that they're already borrowing money from to make their business grow, do it, and then just sell out, take their millions, and walk away.
Yeah.
That's their goal with using this system. So
yeah, it's so interesting because I've, in shifting my business from doing a law firm to essentially what is essentially a creative agency, doing these writing projects for different legal technology companies, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and reading books about how to build an agency, and every one of them talks about the exit, right? Like, when are you going to get out? What does that look like? What are you trying to reach when you get there? Where are your buyers? What do they look like? How do you attract them? It's just really interesting that, and that's probably true of most businesses, that talking about the exit about how you sell the business is a big part of having the business. And, getting back to that trade name thing, it just, we have a lot of weird restrictions that make it so that you can't do that, presumably because, that people still believe we shouldn't be like businesses and we should have different incentives and profit shouldn't be our driver. That is really noble. And I wish that our world were set up in a way that wasn't necessary. And if in the end, what we have instead of profit being the driver is just cash flow being the driver, just freaking staying alive, we're still being obsessed with money, but we're being obsessed with money in a totally 24/7, right? I mean, again, I'm open to persuasion on this, on me being wrong about it, but that's the way it seems to me. So right now for you then, are you doing anything different, because of the regulatory changes? Or are you trying to think, all right, I can't compete based on I'm a lawyer, lawyers charge a lot because people are going to have other options? Has that motivated any kind of changes? And has the COVID thing motivated anything you're doing short term to try to respond to these threats?
Certainly with the COVID situation is just a greater embrace of technology. I'm very grateful that, I have a VoIP system at my office and there's an app for my VoIP system that works on my phone. So I can be at home and be safe and be helping with my family and still make phone calls as if I were at the office, which is really nice. So right. Technology and some of those things have been good. As far as this regulatory thing, where I would like to go is, I don't know, in Utah, we've got this thing called the Online Court Assistance Program, which is the court's way of providing self-help resources to folks that can't afford an attorney or just don't want to spend the money on an attorney for a whole broad spectrum of things. But, I've been doing some of my areas of law for 20 years, and I struggle to get through the Online Court Assistance Program that's supposedly designed for a layperson.
Right.
But because it's got to be so complex to cover every possible permutation, it's overwhelming. And so
maybe some artificial intelligence and work on some things. And I just had a source change.
Yeah, that was weird. And what's funny is that was at the same time that my wife messaged me on Facebook. So I wonder if I kicked your source change. Technology is wacky.
That was really weird.
Yeah, your microphone just suddenly changed.
I think I'm back, but I can't hear you.
I hear you.
Anyway. Okay, well, I can hear you faintly. That's okay. We'll figure it out. So I would love to see a model where I can come in and instead of free or, simpler legal issues, come in between that online court assistance / LegalZoom, Legal Shield, legal whatever, and full-blown attorney work where there can be some automation with some thinking behind the automation to help people solve legal issues, and joint venture with some guys that know how to do that in that regulatory environment and not have to spend a ton of capital to develop those technology resources. So
can you hear me if I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to ask you, on the personal side, on the family side, have you guys found anything to help deal with this situation? Anything interesting you guys have started doing that you weren't doing before that you found, keeps the family from going insane?
Just being able to sit down together. We've sat down at dinner more. My wife is a teacher. She's had to go to work and be available with kids online and that kind of stuff. And because of the FERPA laws, she can't do that from home and have one of our kids look over her shoulder. Oh, you're teaching so-and-so. So I've been able to be home and spend a lot of time with the kids, and it's been good. But, yeah, just the family dinners and checking in and chore charts, and we've had to do a lot of bribery with candy and ice cream. If you'll get your homework done today, we'll go to get an ice cream treat at night, which hasn't been good for the waistline, but that's what we're doing.
Yeah, a lot of brownies over here. Well, I appreciate you. I'm I'm sensing that I might be having audio issues on my end as well, so we're going to close it up. I just want to remind everybody, you can continue this conversation with Travis below, comments, questions, things that they're facing. And also remember that on Sunday, Nick and I will be doing the Ask Twinsies session, where you can, using the hashtag AskTwinsies, you can ask us about anything, serious or not, and we will give terrible life advice. So thank you, Travis. Thank you, guys, everybody. We will see you tomorrow night.
All right.
Thank you.